If you're planning on taking the ACT test for entrance into college or for scholarship purposes, then you recognize that there are many, many programs out there that say they will prepare you to do well. Math is one of the sections of the test that more and more students seem to have difficulty with, and there needs to be some kind of a program out there that says to the students, it's really not a matter of how much math you know. It's a question of how do I go about taking this test, and that's the purpose of this program. It's simply to sit down and say, these are the things that you're going to encounter as you're taking the test, starting with the goal of your test. Rather than just talking about math and trying to reteach math, why don't we just talk about what this test is all about? Your goal is to answer as many questions correctly as you possibly can, and because of that, you don't have to provide the same information that you do in a typical teacher's classroom. You don't have to necessarily show all of your work because, hey, this is a multiple choice test, and there are some strategies that can be employed that are much, much different than those that are used in the classroom. So the important thing here would be to go ahead and take a look at some of the differences between the ACT test and a typical classroom test. Now, for a classroom test, the following things are true, and this is in general. That doesn't necessarily imply that it's always true in every class, but usually you don't have time restrictions. You have a limited subject content. It's usually over a small amount of material. The test format is familiar. You have to show work, and you have to do it a particular way, and usually that is going to be dictated by the instructor. Now we're talking about a completely different scenario, one that most students really aren't that familiar with outside of the few standardized tests that are taken during a typical school year. A complete role reversal of everything that you see here is going to be taking place in a classroom, whereas where we're looking at little or no time restrictions, we're going to suddenly see that there are great time restrictions. You have 60 problems, you have 60 minutes, that's 1 minute per problem. Much different. Varied subject content. You don't just have just algebra, you don't just have geometry, you don't just have trig, you have all of them. They're all mixed in there together. You don't know after completing one problem what the next problem is going to be like, so you don't really get any flow. There's no consistency to the order in which those questions are asked. It's multiple choice, which some people refer to as multiple guess, because if you guess the correct answer, you get just as much credit as if you actually knew the answer. You don't have to show any work, and you can solve the question by any technique of your choice. Therefore, guess what? Guessing, eliminating answers, substituting, these are all viable alternatives to actually working the problem out. But the most important thing is almost certainly the fact that you're not going to recognize how to work every problem on the test. And so when you get to a problem that provides great difficulty, then you have to make a decision. And so maybe that's the most important part of this whole discussion is what do I do when I get to a problem where I look at the problem and I don't recognize the problem. I've never seen it. Perhaps I've seen it, but it's been a relatively long time, and so therefore, I'm not sure exactly how to do it. I mean, I kind of think about problems as being categorized as 100% problems. Yes, I know how to do it. 50%, well, I think I do, but I'm not sure. And 0%, I don't even know what this is asking. And I have to be able to discriminate between these three. So your task is to find and solve those problems that you're most familiar with, because this is where your time is going to be best spent. And if you are a student who has difficulties being able to complete the test, remember we're talking about 60 questions in 60 minutes, then this is where you're lacking. We all get used to working sequentially. Work problem number 1. Once that's finished, work problem number 2, and so forth and so on until we get to 60. You're going to discover that you're a lot better off going in there and searching just for your 100% problems. And once you find those problems, you need to work those problems and then discuss, okay, what do I do about the problems that I was unable to do? If I'm going to pursue this strategy, then the first thing I need is a mechanism by which I can figure out very quickly if I'm going to know exactly what to do on a problem, how to get started, what formula is needed, what concept is needed. You always want to look for keywords. These are the same words that you see in math textbooks. You've been looking at them now for 11, 12, 13 years of your school life. They're very common terms like average or integer, radius. You need to make a list of all of these different math terms and sit down with them and make sure you understand them, or as you're working through practice tests, go ahead and look these words up. Make sure you know exactly what they're asking you to do. After you've established the meaning of the word and exactly what math concept is involved, then you need to identify the question. I mean, literally, the single most important thing that a student can do to answer a question is to figure out exactly what question is being asked. And I suggest that you highlight the question. That means actually circle it. Say, I am looking for this one thing exactly. And as soon as I find this one thing, then that's the answer. And I search for that answer in the answer list. And you're going to discover that by recognizing and highlighting and identifying that question, quite often you can actually just look at the answers and work backwards and decide either by substitution or by elimination which answer or answers might be viable answers. For additional information regarding ACT Math Prep and practice problems where you can actually use the techniques we've talked about here, visit www.mathmyway.com. Good luck.